So you were directly involved firsthand with these mind control programs.
Yes. They have a split mind. So from day to day, they might be the nicest person in the world and just going about it. Consciously, they have no idea that they have been brainwashed and have an alter personality, have a split personality. There's another level of coercion and another level of sick. It is messed up.
So you've had people from various government agencies coming to you asking you to kill people.
Yes, this has happened. Yes. They had deeply hypnotized me after, some years in this and different, we reached different milestones, face strings that are attached to these different parts that were part of the program that was part of your brainwashing, and seeing what I wholeheartedly would have fought you with over being an alien experience and all that was actually like a handler that worked for naval intelligence that I knew well. And then you have the family, okay? Which a lot of those people from the families will also be in the network. Banking families, you hear about ruling families, priest class, ruling class. You can go way back in time about this, okay? These people, they can go by many names, but these people fucking commune with spirits. These are the people that are actually really running the world. And these are believers.
I first heard about your work when you were trying to shine a light on the mind control programs within the United States when the Cybertruck bomber Matthew Livelsberger event happened and his manifesto aired on the Sean Ryan show. And you made a post exposing conversations with, I think it was their former producer, who kind of realized in real time that he was a victim of these MKUltra / Monarch programs. And since then, you and I have spoken over message, and you believe that some of the other big names in the UFO circuit, potentially people involved with Skywatcher and others, have also been implicated in this stuff. So I definitely want to get a little deeper into all of that. But first off, let's just give the audience some context as to who you are. Your ex bio says that you're a former NOC and Monarch turned whistleblower of operational and ongoing MKUltra research derived programs. So can you just elaborate on that, who you are and what your involvement is?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I was raised in, like the bio says, a MKUltra research derived behavioral modification program. It's operational and ongoing. So, we're talking about Manchurian candidate type programs, right? I'm not sure if people are familiar with what a knock is. It's kind of like non-official cover, kind of like a deep cover sort of deal. Essentially, just in my day-to-day life before I was aware that I was actually a subject in these programs, I had an abusive childhood, to say the least, and I grew up wanting to do bad things to bad people, right? And that kind of led me into, wanting to become, wanting to go into, essentially espionage, right? Wanting to go into counter trafficking operations, weapon, drug, human trafficking, that sort of thing. And, and everything came to once I got into that world. I ended up discovering that I had been a subject in these brainwashing programs. So that's really the angle that I'm coming from in this.
So you were directly involved firsthand with these mind control programs.
Yes.
And from my understanding, you were a victim as a child, but then you went on to sort of run the programs from the other side. Is that correct?
Well, I was going through the pipeline and I was being fast tracked to a management position. Ultimately, I never made it to that position. So yes, but I was going towards that line of things. And as I was being stair stepped, desensitized, kind of, groomed and vetted and tested at the same time. Yeah, I never got there. So yes, there was aspects that I was involved with training people, and I was getting into that position. But again, that got halted along the way. But one of the, I guess, duties that I was being groomed for, and that they were looking at me for, was essentially that of a programmer, to be clear. But yes, that's what I was going into, and yes, I was involved with aspects along the way, but I wasn't like the guy running it.
And what is the purpose of these programs?
So, I mean, these are all encompassing programs. Now, we can look at this in contemporary times or we can go way back, but, we're talking about, okay, MKUltra is behavior modification. That's a huge umbrella, okay? We're talking about things just as simple as propaganda for the populace, the general populace, what's effective, what's not. They tested everything.
One way you can stop yourself getting mind controlled while you're surfing the web is with Proton. Proton Unlimited is a full privacy suite. You get a high-speed VPN that works in over 110 countries, end-to-end encrypted email, and 500 gigabytes of encrypted cloud storage. This is a full privacy ecosystem to keep you protected online. Because when you're going down the rabbit hole trying to work out why the people running the world are mind controlling everybody, you want to make sure that you're protected. And by going to proton.me/polarity, you can get yourself 23% off the annual unlimited plan. Each subscription supports me directly and you keep yourself protected online as well. That's proton.me/polarity. The link is in the description below.
But then you get more into these Manchurian candidate level programs to where you have specific brainwashed people, right? Now, somewhere in the middle of this, you have to understand when it comes to sensitive programs, and a lot of where this got industrialized was around post-World War II. Like, that's really where this got industrialized. A lot of this is mental conditioning that's applied across the board to personnel that's in Black projects, okay? We don't leave this up to chance, okay? People talk, things happen, right? So at a certain level already, without any MKUltra, of course there's, like personnel reliability programs and certain things that people go through, and they have to see the head doctor and things like this in these fields. Like, there's already aspects of this, right? But it gets a little bit heavier. So, like, what are the applications for these programs? What's the purpose? I mean, it's a spider web, man. There's all sorts of programs and, techniques, but, at a very base level, virtually all personnel involved with Black projects have certain conditioning applied to encourage silence and compliance. If push comes to shove, complete control, right? So it's the breadth of these programs is just very wide.
So can you maybe just quickly explain what's the difference between, say, like Monarch versus MKUltra? Is Monarch like a sub program of MKUltra?
So here's the thing is, now again, MKUltra, on paper that the public knows about, had like 149 sub projects, right? And again, that's just behavioral modification research across the board, talking about, hey, if we do this sort of propaganda on the news, is that effective? Hey, if we keep telling the same message, is that effective? But then there's also specific brainwashing, and they're going from substances, techniques, all sorts of stuff, right? So there's it gets so convoluted. But Monarch itself is actually a breeding and placement program. Okay. And we can get into that all you want, but Monarch is using generational aptitudes, generational hereditary traits that are conducive to this, and essentially line breeding people like fucking dogs, right? Like, like racehorses, like whatever you want. And then placing, just like monarchs rule territories, they'll get territories that are meant to be ruled. You hear about this monarch mind control and stuff like that. Well, Monarch itself is actually breeding and placement. But then people that are in Monarch are all subjects of this mind control, which has been, loosely dubbed Monarch mind control, right? This is really going into artichoke and bluebird kind of sort of brainwashing programs, protocols, which is just essentially like a training and curriculum. It's, paired with the breeding and the placement, really what they do is they get people young, interrupt their development process, and then guide that development process, and build a structured foundation to their liking, right? They being, the powers that be.
And is that like the GATE program by you say they kind of like intervene with their development? Is that what the GATE program is?
So here, the GATE program, on its face, the GATE program is just gifted and talented education, right? And tons of names, depending where you're at and different levels of that, right? I mean, that's a legit thing. So, just to be clear, not everybody that was in GATE was in any of this, right? But through gate. Obviously, just to be in gate already, there's certain screening, right, and testing and so on and so forth. And then people can be enrolled in adjacent programs that are intertwined with gate, but it gets to be other things as well too. So certain people from gate are funneled, are routed into these full bore brainwashing programs, whether behavioral modification, brainwashing for control, but also enhanced development. So this is intertwined with gifted and talented education, pull-out enrichment, and so on and so forth. But GATE itself is just gifted and talented education.
Yeah. Yeah. It makes sense that it would act as some kind of sort of sorting field or like grooming process to go out onto other things. You posted a huge thread, kind of, I guess, leaking photographs of a compound on Huntersfield Lane. Is this where all of this took place for you?
No, not at all. What this was is, this took place in a lot of areas. I grew up in upstate New York in the Adirondacks, in the Adirondack Mountains, right on the edge of them. And then, went into Tennessee, when after I turned 8, we moved to Tennessee. But so what Hunter's Field and Ring Farm and that territory there is, that was a private airstrip, out there, kind of get into the wilderness. I'm adjacent to a farm that would have like mazes and a cornfield and things like this. There's a lot of hangars out there. That in the 80s, during the Iran Contra scandal, if you're familiar with that, if you've heard of that, that's kind of like adjacent with, when they started importing cocaine and, got, the U.S. hooked on crack, right, and things like this, and then we're funding the Contras in Nicaragua, so on and so forth. So what Hunter's Field was a black site and, private airstrip and just, all around area that was utilized. There was a lot of trafficking and smuggling going on from that area, but there was also a lot of drills and training that was going on in that area as well. So, there was subjects that would be routed there. They had already had their base conditioning, their base programming done. This was much further along. All the extreme brainwashing takes place during the developmental and formative years for children. You can't do the same sort of thing in an adult. It would mess them up. They don't have the same neuroplasticity. Their brain's already formed, right? A lot of that base level stuff happens, when children are young, when they're, growing. So, Hunter's Field there was a lot of training and building and programming done there, but it was already to adult assets. We were not dealing with children there at all.
Right. So, but there's a photograph there of what it looks like you with a wolf. Is it you?
Yeah, that's me.
Okay, and is that at Hunter's Field?
Yeah. So I had a house there, right there adjacent to it, right there beside it. So yeah, I had some wolves there. I had some wolf hybrids, pit bulls, just all sorts of stuff. And yeah, we would, utilize some wolves and some drills there. I can go into that if you want to kind of explain it. But go ahead. What were you saying?
You included photos of yourself with these wolves, and there's like these aerial shots of these mazes. So can you maybe explain why there are wolves there and what the purpose of these mazes are?
Yeah, sure. So, one thing is, I love canines. I love wolves, things like this. There's layers to this. But for example, what the mazes were like, there's a lot of, you get to like indoor, outdoor training. There's different things. Like one thing we would do is kind of run like rite of passage stuff. And you get a lot of like new recruits and stuff. And, there was a lot of guys that, were in special forces, not just special forces by any means, but there was a lot of like special forces, special mission units running through there. So like we would have different things to where like, new guys, we'd be running them through the maze, right? There'd be like a capture the flag sort of deal going on, right? Or, to where in the middle of this thing, there'd be like an American flag. We're here in America, and, they'd have to get out with it, things like that, right? So, they're going through this. There's all sorts of little booby traps. There's all sorts of different things and surprises. One of those surprises would be that oh shit, all of a sudden you're in the middle of this thing and, you know, you got a fucking wolf in there, right? See how they react to the surprise, see how they handle it. Can they keep their cool? What's going on, you know? So that was one of the aspects. There was all sorts of different sort of training and drills, but kind of the main one, the rite of passage to where we really feel people out, was, yeah, they have to get in and get out with the flag, and we drop the wolf on them and you know, see what happens, right? And he was an
Right.
asshole, to be honest. Like that one, you know, was along the lines of somewhat. I mean, you can't really fully domesticate like a pure wolf, right?
Yeah.
But you know, he was raised, you know, with me and like pit bulls and stuff. So he'd play really rough. And you know, he was, you know, about $120, you know, fully fed about $130, right? So he was a big boy. So you know, he wouldn't go full and like crazy attack you. But if you didn't expect him, like it's a lot to deal with. And he would, you know, jump and play and, you know, fuck around, right? So so it was just a good thing to drop in and see what happens with it, right? But there was a
Yeah.
bunch of different things going on there, but that was kind of the main one that we drop on people.
There's a clip of Nathan Reynolds, who I've covered on the channel before, and he's talking about this exact place, Hunter's Field, and like the wolves being there, and that he was forced to develop like a relationship with these animals.
It was Hunter's Field, and they would have a maze, a gauntlet that they would set up to do simulated training experiences, but they would release the wolves into it while you're running in this what you think is like another training house, kill house kind of scenario, and you got to rescue a hostage, or you got to take somebody out, or you got to extract somebody, and then there's suddenly stinking wolves in there.
You got to kill the wolves?
Heck no, bro. You make friends with the wolves. I love wolves, bro.
Oh.
It's like, to me, it's like coming home. It's like the pack I've been waiting my whole life to come back to, bro. I can talk. I can be like.
Are they released to kill you?
No, they have restraints. Like you train, you're on mission here, and they're training dogs at that point. You know,
Gotcha.
they're training wolves.
Gotcha.
You know, but they're teaching you, like I was telling you earlier, you have to know how to handle fighting against animals and infiltrating around animals and dealing. It's a serious thing. If you've never had to deal with attack dogs, it's a horrifying nightmare. It's called Hunter's Field, and it was a air base, but in a field, so not towered, not known. And it's where special operations groups would be able to go in and out of to do different training exercises. And one of these field assets, a guy kind of like me, different background and story, but like me, lived there with dogs that were not dogs, wolves, like actual wolves.
Have you met Nathan Reynolds?
Yeah, I've met him. But to be clear, so Nathan came through Hunter's Field. Maybe it was 2006 or 2007, but like I didn't know him back then. You got to understand, like I was stationed there, right? And like we'd also be like suited up, and like, you know, like this would be the middle of the night, and like it's not really in a position to recognize most of the people there, if that makes sense. So you know, I know him like nowadays, but I didn't like know him back then. He had ran through Hunter's Field, and that's where I was stationed, and I was kind of running the site. He didn't develop the relationship with wolves there. In his upbringing, like many people that went through these programs, that's often when you'll develop that relationship. You know, there's a large part of people that go through these programs that are raised feral, you know.
Yeah, he says that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he talks about that a lot. And I think in that clip as well, he speaks about someone who sort of lives there with the wolves. And I was kind of thinking, like, is he referring to you? But it doesn't sound like he is referring to you.
Yeah, that was me. Yeah, I was the one living there with the wolves. Yeah, absolutely.
Wow. Interesting. Yeah, and so I guess he kind of, when I saw that clip, you know, that really kind of, I guess, verified the existence of this place. But you also sent through a ton of data about an ex-DIA and CIA helicopter pilot named Gene Chip Tatum, who was working at this same site as far back as like 1980 to 1985. Is that right?
Yeah, well, he wasn't really working there. I mean, they set it up. So, you know, back then he was part of an operational subgroup. That operational subgroup could also be called an interagency task force, you know, whatever you want to call this stuff. Basically, these culprits, right? These perpetrators, these, you know, deep state, whatever you want to call it, right? People running shit. They'll have their men in DIA, CIA, NRO, NSA, FBI, so on and so forth. And, you know, they'll use their men to unite the powers and the access in these groups, right? and then, be able to steer their own agenda by utilizing the powers and access from each group. Same thing with politics. I'm not sure how much you know about like America, but you have the separation of powers: judicial, legislative, executive. They'll have their people in each branch, and so that way within their own group they can enact their corrupt agenda, right? Chip stood up the site with other people during the formative years of 160th, which is now 160th SOAR. Used to be like Task Force 160, something before then. That's like black helicopters and stuff. That's actually what it is, the 160th.
That was my code name. They'd put together an aviation task force at Fort Campbell, Kentucky. They took CIA assets, CIA officers. They put them under the control of the National Security Council. And they built this new unit called 160th Aviation Company that really wasn't on any of the military TO&E equipment lists. Over 25 years, I was able to compile quite an insurance policy. These documents are nothing compared to those documents. I feel comfortable in coming forward with these, and the only reason I'm coming forward with these, I had no intention of ever doing anything with these, but when they went after my wife, they went after an American citizen, and that's unacceptable in my mind. Going after other foreign intelligence officers, foreign politicians and all, that's just part of the spook business. That's what we did in counter-espionage, but you don't do that against our own citizens. When you try to neutralize an American citizen, you've gone against everything I believe is right, and I'll do everything I can to expose the men involved.
And so they're the premier aviation, experts that, pilot all the, special forces, special mission units. But yeah, he had a hand in standing up the site, which back then was, largely used just for like mission practice before missions and stuff. It's kind of like a forward operating location, forward operating site. There's different names for this stuff,
Okay. And just quickly on that, when you say like that's what the black helicopters are, like the first thing I think of is when these whistleblowers talk about getting black helicopters over their houses. Is this what you think this is where it comes from?
So, I mean, sure, yes, a lot of times, but nowadays there's definitely a lot of just completely separated non-governmental organizations and people that just have like, third party, companies, and we'll have nondescript helicopters and stuff like that. A lot of this since way back has been layered off. Just to be clear, people didn't know about 160th until Waco, if you're familiar with like the Waco massacre.
I've heard about
when
it.
The 160th got outed. But yeah, they have stuff layered off and like, really slickly set up nowadays. So I would say probably most of what you hear isn't going to be 160th nowadays, but absolutely, the 160th has had a hand in, especially back in the day, some of this harassment, intimidation, things like this, but they're more like for, mission utilization and stuff like that. They're not really handling low level harassment and stuff like that nowadays. You'd have to be a real key player doing something important to be messed with by them directly.
Right. So just going back to Nathan Reynolds and the programming aspect of this for a second, in that same podcast, he talks about sleeper cells.
I have some contact, yeah, but they're sleeper cells.
Yeah.
They're still my position in that team. These are lone wolves, right? It's a real phrase for a reason. We call them lone wolf assassins for a reason. These are guys that live a very unentangled life, but very anonymous background noise lifestyle on purpose. Many of them are still online, meaning they'll still pick up a phone and they'll still get an order and they're still going to go out and do what they do.
Can you explain what a sleeper cell is?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, a sleeper cell is, it's essentially you have a sleeper, spy, agent, whatever, either one or multiple. It could be a husband and wife. It could just be one person. It could be whatever. A sleeper is essentially like an agent, whether it be a soldier, a spy, that's living undercover, right? Nobody knows what they are. They could be a teacher. They could be a gas station clerk, right? They though also could be actually in the military, right? I mean, they could be a politician, they could be anything. A sleeper is just merely someone that is waiting to be activated, right? And in a location. So sleeper cells refer to either single or groups of sleeper agents that are just somewhere, right, waiting to be activated, right? And what are they going
Okay.
to get activated? To sabotage what they're involved with, to go out and assassinate someone. They could be to attack critical infrastructure. It could be anything. But yeah, so a sleeper
Mhm.
is, a sleeper spy, sleeper soldier, sleeper
So,
agent.
given the nature of MKUltra and all of this stuff, do these people know that they're a sleeper cell, or is this something that can be activated subconsciously? Because like we hear a lot with these kind of things that these people who have been brainwashed or mind controlled, they can be sort of triggered or activated, is maybe a better word, by sounds, smells, words. So do these people know that they're a sleeper cell?
So when you're, not every sleeper in the world is MKUltra, right? And we're just using MKUltra as the term, right? Just to catch all. But
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, here's the deal: is largely no, but many yes. But here's the thing: is you have got to understand that even the ones that aren't aware, when we're talking about someone that's a Manchurian candidate at that level, they have a split mind. Okay. So from day to day, they might be the nicest person in the world and just going about it consciously. They have no idea that they have been brainwashed and have an alter personality, have a split personality, essentially, that is that sleeper, right? But deep down, that is an existent part of them, right? And, how did you get that part to be quiet and all that? They've just went through the most extreme circumstances to instill that discipline in them and to let them know the consequences and to let them know that what they're serving is like all powerful enough that like it still applies, right? To make it worth it and like, make them do that. So even the ones that consciously aren't aware, deep down, they have a part of them that is aware, right? I mean, they're not just 100% robot zombie, right? So, it gets kind of complicated, but
Mm,
largely, no, these people are not aware, which makes them so much more effective and makes the whole
yeah.
thing just that much more terrifying.
Yeah, and it makes me wonder, right? Because there's so many things that it sounds like this stuff can be used for. And, when we look, say, at Hollywood, for example, there are a lot of people who have, from our consumer end, it just looks like these people kind of go off the deep end. You've got Kanye West, you've got Britney Spears, just to name a couple of examples where people, it's kind of like, what has happened to these people? And then you've got whistleblowers such as like Matthew Brown, who have come out and said, so much of the reality that we live in is a lie. And it makes me wonder if, this lie is kind of threaded together by using people as almost like puppets to create a charade through Hollywood. You've also got, and I don't want to lump all school shootings and things like that in with this, because I'm sure some are just actually mentally ill people. But you've got shooters that then sort of, after the event happens, sometimes new laws are conveniently then instated that sort of create more control or surveillance on the state. You've got the things that you've spoken about, but also like, yeah, creating children as a conduit to contact like non-human intelligence. Like it seems like there is just this vast network of use cases for this program that it's kind of concerning. Like how far does this thing stretch, and is it actually weaving together this like false reality that we all live in?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, and here's the thing is, I mean, already without MKUltra, right? Like people get used as puppets and things like this. But I mean, when you get to things that just people normally wouldn't do, like you said, you can't lump everything together because there are people that just go through stuff and may have
Yeah.
mental issues, may have whatever messed up, right, where they come from. But like, if you're trying to get something, someone to do extreme things, like there's another level of coercion and another level of sick, right? That needs to be applied. And I mean, yeah, it is. I mean, it is It's messed up.
I think recently there was a shooting. I'm pretty sure it was around or even in New York. This is maybe like a month or so ago. And I believe the person who did it ended up taking themselves out after it. But in his car or something, like a note was found that said, like, check my brain, like something is wrong with me. Like, I don't know why I'm doing this or something to that effect. So, you know, to me, again, you can't lump everyone in with it, but it does seem like, yeah. And, you know, then you've got the kid that shot at Trump's ear last year. And that whole thing just feels weird. Like the kid's like not on any social media. That the whole apartment gets like scrubbed clean. I mean, you know, I don't expect you to have any sort of intel on that, but there's just so many things that just line up with what you're talking about. That these like they, you know, these kids are like sleeper cell agents that get activated to potentially do something. What do you believe your purpose was to them? Like, do you think were you just brought in to go on to manage programs, or was there something else that you were used for?
So, I mean, there was many things that I was used for, but I mean, specifically, at the point where I was, I mean, one was I was building a network, right? I was into human intelligence, right? So I'm developing assets. I'm developing a network to where, I have people. I can, vet them to see if we can try to pull them into the fold, whatever, see, where we can use people, where we can tap people to exert our influence, to get them to do a favor, to do this. I was keeping tabs on other assets, a lot of people that were in the music business, that were in the entertainment business. I was had a lot to do with that. And that's a whole other thing. But, like I was the weed man for a lot of these guys, by the way, which like, you share everything with them, kind of reverse the role, especially for like famous people, right? It would kind of like reverse the secretive stuff, right? Because I'd be looking at them. I don't want them talking, right? I wasn't, there's no starstruck, aspect to it, this and that. On the other hand of things, right? Like, I mean, there was, whatever you want to call it. Like, I mean, the term assassination for some situations is kind of ridiculous, right? But I mean, there was, killings, I mean, whatever you want to call it. Like there was things being done, and specifically finding proxies to do these things for you, whether it's influence, whether it's terminations, neutralizations, so on and so forth. I mean, so what was I used for? To continue building a network for influence and enforcement, right? And that was like basically it, obviously there was, aspirations and, I was being tested and groomed for it, as I would build up. And like someone that ends up in the management position, like still, especially in this, you have to be put through the paces, even if you're fast tracked. So you have to have your hands on and you have to go through these things so you can say you did them at the very least, especially when you're next to other people. You have to have some sort of experience and you have to earn your stripes, right? But yeah, I mean, it's all about influence and enforcement. I mean, is really what it's about. Wherever you are in that network, in that spider web of things.
You provided an old photograph of you, and I'm guessing it's your older sister. Where was this taken? This photograph, and how old were you?
One where I was a child.
Yeah.
Probably. I mean, that was in New York somewhere. Probably the one talking about the morticians and all that shit. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was in New York. Man, I was raised in upstate New York, kind of out in the edge of the Adirondacks. So yeah, that was in upstate New York.
Okay, because with that photo, you included a pretty horrific letter that was handwritten by your sister, which details an experience that you both had where you were drugged as children and forced into touching and like engaging sexually with a dead body. What do you believe is the purpose behind them doing like these sadistic things to you? Like, is that part of the programming process, or is this just being around sick people?
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a method to the madness, man. I mean, people get the rocks off and stuff like that, but that's largely not what this is about. I mean, one, you have weird traumatic experiences that help with that disassociation. Okay. And a lot of the different, at the base of this is unethical and dark behavioral neuroscience, right? So, if someone goes through something traumatic, they disassociate. But if you do the same sort of trauma, they'll kind of disassociate because it's a mental defense into the same area. So sometimes there needs to be different sorts of trauma. That's kind of explains some of the different really weird out there stuff. But also at the same time, you get a child and you know you're eventually going to want this child to carry out terminations, whatever you want to call this, right? I have a trouble with semantics when I'm talking to people, right? I don't know what wording to use and stuff like
No,
this.
you're good.
But like, say you have someone and you want them to reliably kill when they're older, and you want them to be able to function adequately around certain circumstances. So it's a stacked purpose. Not only was it like, hey, you go through this and you're disassociating, because you're doing weird stuff with dead bodies. The other thing is it's desensitizing you early. Desensitization, right? That's like the name of the game. So you can get comfortable doing around this stuff. And essentially it's the systematic removal of inhibitions, right? Of boundaries, of limits. Nothing will phase you. And if nothing phases you, especially as a child, imagine what that child could do, right? I mean, regardless, you brainwash this child into believing something. There doesn't even need to be any reality to the hoodoo, right? Once you get to that part, right? You just it can just be what do you call it? Not propaganda. It can be the word, I can't believe the words escape, placebo. But so you just put a child through hell and they become a little fucker to deal with, right? You get your hands on them. So a lot of desensitization, a lot of just weird trauma. But I mean, it progressed. It obviously wasn't just that. But that was just the initial trauma for dissociation, and then initial steps of desensitization.
And with that, you wrote to me in a message. You said, I went rogue and then whistleblew once I found out my childhood was in the program and that I was brainwashed. So how did you come to that realization, and what was it like, I guess, to have like a sudden influx of memories that you weren't previously aware of?
Yeah. So, we touched on this earlier about, in 2008, and you saw that dog bite dog thing, right? So, what was it like? So here was the thing was, I was getting stair step. I told you I wanted to, I ended up going into the clandestine services, right? So I was going in kind of like as a deep cover spy, right? And I had been groomed through my teen years, through childhood and all that, but like coming up in my teen years, there were some friends of the family that were in the service in different aspects, right? And they kind of got me an in, right? So I was already being steered towards it. And once I got into this, you got to understand, like in my early 20s, I finally kind of like ironically got official, but at me getting official was becoming like an off books knock, right? So like I was brought in and then completely off the books, sworn in before like a limited panel, right? And I was like had friends of the family, like was in with like senators and stuff like this, right? So what happened was, as soon as I got off the books, I was already embedded in the criminal underworld, right? I had a bunch of marijuana grow houses. I was into various trafficking, right? I was in deep already when I got into this, right? So what they started coming to me with was personal favors, right? And I was in a leveraged position to where I couldn't say no. You have to understand, right? Like they're coming to me with sick, unethical favors, to say the least. And like if I say no, like you got to understand, I'm already like, I can't just be like, oh yeah, I'm getting unlawful orders and blah 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 blah. No, they had me by the balls.
So
I was
who
like,
is this? Who's like coming to you asking for favors?
Senator was one of them, but then like there was like a National Security Council handles. I had a CIA liaison for the National Security Council. And then like these people, there were some of them were Royal Order of Jesters. There's some Knights of Malta. There was people involved with these dragon societies. A lot of these people that are in these official positions, say clandestine services, CIA, right? DIA, whatever it is. A lot of these people are also in these groups, Royal Order of Jesters, right?
Yeah.
Again, dragon society, so on and so forth. So there was various people. It's like
So
I've named some people. I only want to name exact. But
yeah, no, that's okay. But what I wanted to ask was, you said you're sort of deeply embedded in the criminal underworld, growing marijuana and whatnot, but you're also on sort of close terms with people with senators, people in the CIA. So what I'm getting there is that like these people in these high positions and agencies are kind of like they're aware of what you're doing and they're okay with it.
Well, here's the thing is, I mean, what did they know? I don't know what they know about me. Once I became, you gotta understand, one, I was deep cover. So like I had already came up around the family, but like I had a handler that I reported to, right? You got to understand, right? And like there's not like direct contact like in certain aspects. Like I was very close with the senator's family, but I'm not like going and having meetings with him to where like everybody sees and stuff like that, right? So like how much do they know? I didn't know what they knew and I didn't think they knew much. But I quickly came to find out that they did know more and had been keeping an eye on me and were looking at me to progress and pull into the fold. So, you know, one was the favors like got real bad. Like, I mean, just to give you an idea, you know, when I was in knock, one of the meeting places and to where I get my assignments, like there was a lot of, you know, different things on the way there and like covert dead drops and things like this. But there was meetings at the local strip club, right? And under the strip club, like there was some illegal gambling and they had, you know, just like high-end party rooms and there was like a lot of big shots that would go there, right? But so that was one of the meeting places, okay? And there was other people that were brainwashed, sex slaves there, stuff like this. One of the girls there that was with the senator, was with a lot of high profile people. She had HPV, which I'm not sure if you're familiar with that. It's like a sexually transmitted thing, HPV, human papillomavirus virus or something. There's a bunch of types of that. Okay.
Yeah.
So one of the types transmits to genital warts in males, but it doesn't come up for about 3 months. So one of the things was she had given tons of people genital warts and they were pissed and they wanted her killed. Right. So they, you know, they came to me for that. And I like one, again, there's a lot of compartmentalization and stuff like that. So like these people that had tasked me with this probably didn't realize, but my mom was, you know, an escort and was used in prostitution and things like this, right? So like when they're coming at me to fucking kill a woman that, you know, had like given them that they're already misusing and stuff, I was never with any of that, right? So like that already like hit switches inside me deeply to where I'm like, you know, I'm short circuiting here. Like, because I'm like, oh my God, what am I going to do? Because I'm about to get burnt and end up in prison because like, I can't tell these guys no. And I'm already in deep and like, you know, like I'm finally was getting to where I wanted to be in life. Right. Like, so it was like a bad situation. There was another thing going on. There was like the local sheriff at Williamson County, which was like the richest place. His son, who was a deputy, had raped my girlfriend's best friend, which was also like a prominent heart doctor's daughter. And like they were in the network dirty too, right? So they wanted him killed. So like, you know, like all this happened at once. So they tasked me with this and I was getting ready to say no. And at the same time, like there was a lot going on. There was other people that I worked with and other agents, and including some of the people that were family friends that kind of brought me up as a teenager that were in deep, that were intelligence agents and stuff, right? So like there was talking and that was when I found out I had been brainwashed, right? Like stuff started coming up and like there was already some people that were like these fucking dirtbag senators and these dirtbag, like no matter what, the guys doing the work never liked the bureaucrats anyways, right? Like that's a common thing no matter what, right?
So you've had people from various government agencies coming to you asking you to kill people.
Yes, this has happened. Yes.
Wow.
And well, that's I mean, really... you say, wow, but this isn't like, we all know this happens at places, right? I happen to be in a fucked up position where I was one of the people in places, but yeah. And you got to understand, they're not just like asking some random guy. The guy they asked, they made sure they stepped into a position where I couldn't say no. And if I did, that I wouldn't be exactly a prime person to listen to about it. Right. So they made sure that there were steps taken to cover their ass right before they get a person in that position to do the favors. It's intelligent. They, covered their ass as much as they could. Right.
But it makes me wonder, like, given what you're doing and have been doing now, basically trying to blow the whistle on these programs and talk about it, do you not feel like someone's going to be asked to try and kill you?
I mean, a lot's happened since then. I mean, I did already almost die. Then I literally got falsely imprisoned. I got, I was legitimately imprisoned because they, tipped off the people in my grow houses when this all went bad. But then like there was a clerical error and these fuckers had me locked up in prison for 2 years due to a clerical fucking error. I mean, so here's the deal is, yes, of course, like especially speaking out of the internet, especially as soon as I get effective and like really start getting out there, yeah, I'm worried about it. Of course I'm worried about it. One, I do have, what people call a dead man switch, right? Like I got a whole fucking database of shit. And it's not just like, oh, hey, we know that this person did this bad thing, Like, we have literally lists of brainwash assets and also activation codes, you know what I'm saying, to activate them and shit like this. Like I was in the middle of this shit, and it wasn't just me. There was other people that were keeping logs of who was coming through there and then putting evidence to the side. And like, we see the writing on the wall. We know, that they were utilizing us and, setting us up, right, to burn. And we're the first layer of defense, right? They don't want the buck to stop with them, right? So like, yes, I got some stuff, put away. There's a lot of people too. Like if they kill me, maybe that will motivate a bunch of people, that I know and my associates to, do what I do even more and, and cross the line and this and that and to fuck with their infrastructure more. Right. Like, I mean, there's limits to it. Who knows? At the same time, like, how much of what I'm doing really matters. And like, once it gets to the point to where, I've already exited from that scene, I've got what I've got, all that. It's largely information war, man. That's really what this is. Like, yeah, I'm stressed out about the whole thing. I'm not gonna lie, So yes, it's a possibility. Yes, they could off me. I think at this point, if they try to do some shit, I think it would probably make the situation worse at large.
Yeah.
And they got their hands full, right? So I mean, it is what it is.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I respect that, man, and good on you for doing what you feel like is right, despite what the consequences might be. I want to ask you this, and I mean it respectfully because I am curious. But given that you were part of a brainwashing program by your own admission, how confident are you that your own memories are even accurate?
Yeah, sure. I mean, that's a very important thing. So, I mean, me personally, I've went through serious therapy, using proven effective modalities and went through a lot. Like could some random memories be fake that come out? You got to understand like how this stuff works. One is, when I went through a lot of reintegration, a lot of this, you hear about a flashback, right? To where like someone might go through a flashback and they're back in the war, right? And they're like back there where it happened,
Yeah.
right? You familiar with that?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
a lot of this, just due to the way that the memories are stored with trauma, it like, short circuits the hippocampus from the amygdala, whatever the exact terminology. Basically, instead of storing in your normal memory, these things store in like your nervous system. So like when I went through a lot of this healing, unfortunately, it involves reliving this. I'm talking about reliving it, feeling it, everything. It's horrible and very rough, right? So like I've relived a lot of this, right? Where I'm at currently, very, very effective. I did go through some layers to where at first there was some confusion about stuff. And let me explain though how that went, because it's not just, hey, I have a completely fake memory that happened and stuff like this. Let me give you one example. Was when I was at Hunter's Field, I had an experience to where, I was there and, essentially a fucking tall gray alien came. Okay. And when I seen him, I was essentially paralyzed. And I kind of thought that he had, like through like mental telepathy froze me. Right. And all this, right. And all this stuff. Well, what ended up happening was, after years of therapy, and I'm still having this memory and had remembered this part, right? And this had all happened like while I'm actively going against this, right? So what happened was I had a flashback and went through this, and come to find out was the paralyzed, frozen up feeling was that my body was tensing up and sort of in shock from remembering this person and remembering the electroshock that I had been subjected to. And I literally relived to where I flashed back through the same kind of memory that I had remembered, except for what had happened was I was in an altered state to where essentially if you're in deep hypnosis, you can have hallucinations. You can have negative or positive hallucinations. Negative means you can not see something. Like you could like have someone hold a glass of water and you could hypnotize someone to not see the person. So you might think the glass of water is floating, right? Positive hallucinations, obviously you're just seeing something, right? So they were using deep somnambulistic hypnosis. And I can, explain this all like in terms and in depth and stuff like this, but essentially, they had deeply hypnotized me to see a specific person as a gray alien. Okay. So like, after, some years in this and different, we reach different milestones, face the, the fear, face the guilt, face the shame, face, the strings that are attached to these different parts that were part of the program that was part of your brainwashing. And, I went through this. So anyways, I had worked through that and seen, that what I wholeheartedly would have fought you with over being an alien experience and all that was actually like a handler that worked for naval intelligence that I knew well. Right. So how confident am I about my memories? I mean, very confident. And also like a lot of the key points I have corroboration for. But if it's like something out there and stuff like that, I mean, I'm not going to go with it. But like, as far as like the stuff to where I'm like, oh, hey, they, wanted me to, do this hit or something like that. Well, like, I mean, this wasn't all in like my, like altered brainwashed personality. Like this was when they were kind of trying to stair step me into the fold there. And I was going, once you get, even if you've been brainwashed, if you go to this to where you're going to be full time, there's a process called going conscious. That's what I was destined for. Because if you do this full time, there's no way you can like not know if you have an altered personality. If you're in on the dirt all the way, right? Like you kind of come into the fold. And there's a whole process with going conscious to essentially I know I'm a little bit over the place here, but like when you're young, you go through these rituals and like part of them, they might have their hand on your hand and make you do something, right? And like you're kind of like made to do something when you're a kid. Well, part of the going conscious is, hey, you take lead on that ritual and then you do it. And when you do it, it connects neuron pathways and essentially merges your personality and you're choosing to do that. Okay. Just like, Catholics go through confirmation, just like Amish people, they go through Rumspringa to where, they'll go out to the town and then, they can come back or not. It's like some people grow up in a culture, grow up in a lifestyle and they're forced to as a child, but then as an adult, they choose. So I was coming up to this point where I got to choose, right? And that's where it all went bad because a lot of this was like just me, you and me here talking in the daytime personality. This wasn't all in my altered brainwashed state, right? Like a lot of what I'm telling you about was like why it went bad because they tried to bring me in this. But, there's some stuff that, there's especially some of the way out there ritualistic stuff, there is no answers to it and all that. But like, I don't try to pursue or, focus or try to use something that's like questionable or any of this. Like, most of the stuff is pretty like simple, obvious, corroborated stuff. So like, I mean, I'm an open book, but yeah, I mean, when you're getting memories, especially like out there stuff you don't remember clear, stuff that you had missing time and you revisit it. But yeah, so
Yeah.
I'm very confident when things that I speak on, I'm very confident due to everything I've been through in my understanding and just, my lived experience.
Yeah, it's interesting that you brought up the alien thing and the, your conscious mind versus unconscious mind, because recently we had Dylan Borland, UFO whistleblower, come out talking. Well, basically, he said that he believes or suspects that he himself was a victim of mind control. So I wanted to talk about that, but maybe just quickly because you brought up the whole alien gray being. What's your opinion on, I guess, aliens versus a non-human intelligence? And when I say that, I kind of mean, physical beings, grays, whatever, versus like an intelligence that exists as like a higher density consciousness or something like that. Do you think like the whole alien side of thing is part of a mind control psyop?
So, and here's the thing is, I'll be honest, like there's some things I don't like to go into too much without the full context, right? Because like it's dicey. But I mean, I'm just going to be completely honest here. And, I could provide more context and things like that. Like people don't take one part of this and try to run with, oh, so he thinks this. Oh, so he thinks this. Like, here's the deal is everything's on the table for brainwashing and psyop. So even real stuff they're using in and convoluting, right? Real stuff they also synthesize and then use it, right? So like this is an unlimited infinite universe, okay? I believe there's all sorts of non-human intelligence, meaning physical beings, including aliens, whether it be ultra-terrestrials here, extraterrestrials from not here, right? So on and so forth. I believe that there's physical, non-physical beings. I believe that there's physical beings that can communicate non-physically. There's the whole gamut, right? There's everything. As far as aliens, from my understanding, and what they're telling people, okay, at the top of this in the program, and like, you know, what kind of like the consensus is, and my understanding is that there's different types of gray aliens. You have some essentially biological robot gray aliens, specifically the small ones, okay? That you have some taller grayish aliens that are supposedly us from the future once we crossed over to like a hive mind silicon-based life form sort of deal, and that you also have some extraterrestrial gray aliens from like another place. You know, a lot of people say Zeta Reticuli, whatever, like that. So like I'm of the understanding that there is aliens and there's different ones out there. I don't put too much into it because it doesn't matter, and if you're not dealing with the like psyop part of and all that, you're never going to get to the truth, right? So like I understand people want to know the answers, but if you don't deal with what's in front of you and actionable, you're never going to get there, right? Because it's all going to be muddy. But the gray aliens 100% are often synthesized and often involved with just completely brainwashing psyop stuff, right? So it's very muddy. But I do believe, yes, that there are things out there and that there's different types.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, Dylan Borland said when he was talking about himself being a victim of mind control, he kind of used the example of people being told to go and like work on a reverse engineered craft or something like that, but they may not even be aware of the fact that they're doing it. So that, again, going back to what I said earlier about this whole, another whistleblower, Matthew Brown, saying, reality is a lie, it's fake. It makes me wonder, like, are these people at the highest levels of these special access programs, they're also under this mind control? So like, where is it coming from? I mean, these people in these programs are meant to be the most highly regarded, respected, elite levels of the security system of the country, but they're being mind controlled. Like, that sounds like whoever is in charge of these people, it's like a nefarious agenda.
Well, I mean, when you say these people are supposed to be the premier security force and all that, I mean, who are you talking about exactly? Because it's not the people that are working on it. The people that they have working on it, are simply have the aptitude and the intelligence and maybe a creative mind to be working on stuff and make solutions, right? And put, things together, maybe how someone else wouldn't. But they're also, they believe that they can either keep them under control, whether it be through threats, fear, coercion, so on and so forth, or otherwise, mentally, intellectually, controlled, right? So like, I mean, these people are fitting this. So you're talking about people that run the program, like what, where exactly and what? And another thing is all of this, and sorry here, but this is the most important aspect to understand here.
Yeah, go ahead.
And people don't like this, but it is what it is. Like, so, you have believers and non-believers in this, right? I call the network and the family. The network is, say, everybody specifically government, but that's also non-governmental agency, right? Like, NGO government, like how they ping pong parts of the program to escape freedom of information, to escape oversight, you get that. So like people, scientists, people with security forces, whatever, right? You have people in the network that are within the program sphere, right? And then you have the family, okay? Which a lot of those people from the families will also be in the network, okay? But the family specifically is people that are brought up, and these are the people that are actually really running the world, okay? And these are believers, okay? And we'll get to that in just a second. But so, you hear about banking families, right? You hear about ruling families, priest class, ruling class. You can go way back in time about this, okay? These people, they can go by many names, but these people fucking commune with spirits, whatever fucking way you want to call this and all this, and they have a certain lifestyle that they bring themselves up with. Other people are brainwashing all this, and yes, MKUltra does it, but what people need to understand is that a large part of this recipe, yes, you can take little bits of this recipe and apply them and apply certain brainwashing techniques and stuff. But when you get to the full recipe, if you will, this is a certain process, a developmental upbringing process. Just like if you have some people that are raised Mormon, you have some people raised Jehovah's Witness, you have some people that are raised Native American, you have some people that are raised Hindi, whatever it is, they have their ways they bring up their young, right? These people have a way they bring up their young, they bring up themselves, because like they know that, hey, if they have a dynasty and their young comes up, if they, just give them everything, they're going to be weak and not be able to run that dynasty, right? Well, part of this is putting themselves through the same stuff, right? Because it instills discipline and it removes inhibitions. It lets people to do stuff. And it also aids in development. Yes, in a lot of ways, it's sick and twisted, but like this is a big world out here. And if you want to be the apex predator, if you want to be, the prime material, right, you have to put yourself through tests and trials and tribulations. Otherwise, you'll never grow to be strong enough, right? So a lot of these people are putting themselves through the same process, right? And it's kind of like any one person is expendable. These people put themselves through a process, and just like external, there'll be a hierarchy to where you'll have security forces, you'll have scientists, you'll have oversight, you'll have bureaucrats. There's an external hierarchy. Well, these people that are in the program at the top, they also have the same hierarchy internally within them. So this is an autonomous religion, an autonomous tribal culture that they bring themselves in. They essentially brainwash themselves, and it's autonomous, it's self-replicating, and it's self-enforcing. So essentially, if someone doesn't go with it, they're expendable, and then someone else, whoever's most suitable, will move into that position. So like these people all agree on this and do this to themselves because it's like the mission is more important than any one person, right? So like they put themselves through this as well, right? But if we get into the ruling, like they're communing, buddy. They're communing with fucking spirits, and they're used like fucking playthings because there are higher intelligences out there, you know, whether it's just, direct spirits you can put your hands around, whether there's an entity somewhere, or whether it's just, what's creative in the subconscious in the infinite mind. Right. But like, these people are communing and yeah, they put themselves through the process too. So it's a machine, it's a mechanism that exists within itself.
When you say these people put themselves through these processes, I've done a bit of digging into like satanic ritual abuse and stuff like that. And these things that are systemic in families, and these families on the outside are just they portray themselves as like any given Abrahamic religion, just like a normal person, but on the inside at home, they are doing like systemically sexually abusing their children, and because it happened to their mother and father and their mother and father, and like you said, it's kept through the family. So is what you're talking about what I'm talking about right now? Are we sort of on the same line of thinking?
Yes, it's cyclical, and exactly, it's cyclical. It's self-replicating. This is a process. You have to understand too. People hear about satanic ritual abuse, and these rituals and this and that, but they don't quite understand what it is. Like, there's a process. There's a map. Like occult pathworking. Have you heard of that? Occult pathworking. So there's a developmental process, right? Like they put themselves through this, and there's method to the madness. They're not just doing random rituals, right? Just like, some people have Halloween, some people have Christmas, some people have this. Like they have their holidays, they have their this, they have that. They have a curriculum. They have a plan, they have an agenda, and they raise themselves up through it. They have their own way of school, right? Yes, they'll send themselves to specific institutions and stuff like that, but I'm talking about like they have a specific way. It's a culture, a religion, all in one, right? And yes, they put themselves through this and bring themselves through this. Yes, it includes sexual abuse. Yes, it includes, physical abuse. It includes spiritual abuse. Yes, it includes all this. So yes, it is a culture. It's a lifestyle. It's a religion all in one. And they raise themselves in it as well. It's not just random rituals. Yes, it's a specific thing in a way it's a set of initiations, right? In a occult pathworking. Yes. Yeah, we're talking about the same thing.
Do you have an idea of like who is it that they worship? Like who is this spirit or god that they are doing this stuff for?
This gets a little dicey because there's many names.